Hi everyone, it's just Pip from AgriWebb here. You may have noticed we've made quite a few different changes to the live sessions on the individual animal management platform recently. So I just thought I would put together a bit of a video going through some of those. We've got a few different scenarios that I've mocked up just to showcase these, but yeah, really hoping that this can help make your life a little bit easier. And yeah, some things that we have been really looking forward to delivering. So if I just come in here and into the record template section, you can see I've got three different, templates or around that northern sort of context. So if we go in the breeders scenario, you can see if I create live record, I've got a session set up just with a few example or steps that are pretty common. So I guess this is the scenario where you're bringing breeders through wanting to get some fertility records recorded in on them. So you'll see there that I have got an add animal step in. Now, regardless of this, if this is a sort of weaners template or sow cattle induction, whatever, I do always recommend that regardless of if the animals you're bringing through you anticipate to be on AgriWebb or not, purely due to the rates when you get animals mismustered and they don't come in, or animals that come in without any tags. We always have that add animal step in. It just means that you can set defaults for all of those animals, and it means it'll save you time when you are actually bringing them through the crush. So it also means if an animal comes in that is already on AgriWebb, it's not going to duplicate it and create another one. It will just skip over the add animal step, but still record everything else. So you'll see that pregnancy scan, observation being the lactation status, and then the weight record. So yeah, I do recommend always having that in. It just helps save a bit of time, especially for those rogue animals that do sort of jump in and they're not necessarily on AgriWebb already. So yeah, as I said, you can see I've got my preg scan, observation, and weigh steps in there as well. Now, this part in here is something that has changed. So you'll see I've got, for my breeders, I've got both a cow and a heifer age class to select from. You can have as many of those as you want, if you're putting in heifer weaners as well, for example. But if I just go in under the cow age class and hit that edit age class button, one thing that has been updated, not too recently, but thought I'd bring your attention to, is the date of birth tracker. So you can see there we've added the ability to either not track them at all or track them at different sort of levels of accuracy. So you'll see here I've got this selected on the year, and this button down the bottom where it says select DOB for each animal in session, I've just turned that one on, meaning that I would like to record each year differently for each new cow that I add onto the system. So I guess if you're just wanting to go any cow that's not on, just put them in, let's go 2019. You can also do that by just flicking that off and selecting the year of birth there in the red box. But for me, year of birth is, say, an important thing that I want to track, so I'm going to flick that on. If we keep going, this hasn't changed, but to go through, you can add as many different breeds as you want. And if we keep going down, we've then got the date on farm box. Now, this is a new additional. We've kind of changed where it was put in. I guess the main thing to look at there is if you leave it empty, AgriWebb will default that to equal the date of birth for that animal. Now, that means for all of your reports in terms of the livestock rec report and things like that, they will come in as animals bred on farm. If that date is different, so in the scenario where you have transferred animals on or bought animals on, you can change that and adjust it to be, say, today's date when they were being inducted. That will just mean that they come in as either purchased or transferred on in your livestock rec report. So for most animals that are bred on farm, whether it be weaners or cows or whatever, always just leave that box empty and then it'll default back to the animal's date of birth. Now, if we keep going down, this is the main thing that has changed really recently. Now, this is the tag types. So you'll see this design is a bit of an update. The key part here is, you'll see if I go right down to the bottom, we've got that tag type to add section. So you'll see in this one, I've already opted for a visual ID tag. So you'll see there, my visual ID input method, I want to manually enter that. Now that could be in the case where they've already got tags in their ears. So if, say, cows are coming through, they've already got their EID tag in one ear and then their visual ID tag in the other. So you're just wanting to record that on AgriWebb. So obviously they're not going to be coming through in any particular order. So you can put manual entry and my VID prefix might just be P, for example. So you can go through and go, this one's P23, the next one might be P48, and so on and so forth. Now, the other scenario is if you're actually putting tags in their ear as of today. So if I flick that Visual ID input method over to say sequential tags, this will then allow me, if I scroll down, to select a starting tag. So in this case, I might be starting at P001, for example. Now, that will put that tag in the first animal that comes through, and then it'll consistently count up as you're going. So really helpful for when you are putting new tags in animals if you're tagging them in order. But yeah, the other method is really just manual entry if either they've got them already or you're putting them in no specific order. So I might leave that one there at, say, P001, and then you'll see up here I've also got my electronic ID tag. So that is purely just going to scan through the EID off of your indicator when you're in a live session. You'll also have the option in the live session to record the NLIS ID, which is that number that's written on the outside of the tag. Now, most people wouldn't necessarily worry about putting that in, but if for any reason that you want to, then definitely go for it. If I go in as well on this tag types to add, there's a few others there. The one really to call out is the herd tag. Now this is just a generic tag that every animal would be getting. So if you are, say, tagging all of your breeders or your wets or dries or something with a different just blank flag tag, then that's what this is designed for. So if I tag off of this, you can see it's really just a tag color and a description. So different scenarios for different people might use that one, but really the main ones are, that visual ID as well as the electronic ID. So if I hit save defaults there, you'll see these buttons look the same. So essentially you can do that both for the cow or the heifer age class, however much you want. And then if you keep going, we've still got that date on farm. So again, I'm leaving that empty for both in this scenario, the heifers and cows that are coming through because they were born on farm. You've then got some more defaults to set. So I've got pregnancy scan default. So if I want to record in days, weeks, months, or my basic age range. So this one I might be recording in months, for example. And then I've got my observation. So I am going to be recording a lactation status on these animals. So you see here, if I hit set defaults, I can then determine if I want it, the default to be either wet or dry. So if I hit wet, then it means they'll all be recorded as wet unless I flick it over to dry. So again, setting those defaults really just helps to minimize the number of buttons you've got to click during that live session. So I hit set as default, that one will set for me. If I keep going, I've then got a few more options. So hardware, I haven't got any hardware here to connect to, but that's just the usual connection to, say, TrueTest or Gallagher or whatever you've got. And then we've got our queue animals in session. Now, this you can see it's sort of grayed out for me. It's on, and you can see that's because I've got my set date of birth for each animal toggle is on. So really it means if two animals, say, get in the crush and they both get scanned at once, AgriWebb's not going to jump to that next animal until you've recorded everything you need to record on that first animal. So it's just going to wait for you. So yeah, really good for when animals jump in and sometimes it can get a little confusing, what EID are we up to? So I always just have that queue animals turned on. Excuse me. If I keep going, we've then got our draft and management group options. So if I hit on draft, another new feature that we have put in is the ability to see weight groups by draft. So if I say I want to put them into pens or even draft groups, you can see I've got here draft 1, 2, and 3. I might be drafting them, say, on weight or even pregnancy status into those different drafts. So having those selected are really handy, and it will mean you can see those weight groups and weight summaries by draft as well. If I keep going, I've then got my management groups. So we used to have to always have that retain management group switched on in order to see the current management group that the animal was in. Another change that we've made, which I'll go through in a second, is now that you can actually see that information without having that turned on. So it depends what you're using management groups for, but if you're wanting to usually keep them in the same management group unless they're changing, sale cattle, or if you're managing based off, say, pregnancy status or even lactation, then by all means keep that on. But again, you can come in and add your different management groups that you want to add them into as well. So I might, if being wet or dry is really important to me, I could have that in there as well. So that is that from, I guess, the setup standpoint. If I now hit start session, this is where we'll get into a bit more, I guess, detail of what has changed and what's been updated. Now, obviously, I'm not connected to hardware, so I am just going to hit more actions down the bottom, and I can select an animal manually. So this is the perfect scenario of, let's say they've lost their EID tag, but they've still got their visual ID. You can come in here and hit select animal manually, and then search for the animal that you're after. So in this case, let's say B1529 has just walked up the crush. She's lost her nils tag, but we're bringing her up anyway. I can hit select, and you'll see this is the dialogue that you're probably used to seeing with a few different changes. So the first being that orange box saying an animal already associated with this EID, animal creation is going to be skipped. So that's what I was saying when you might have the add animal step in the template, but AgriWebb's not going to duplicate it. If there's the add animal step, it's just going to keep going with all the rest of the information. Now, a key thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is this little drop down up the top here. So if I press this, it's now going to open up and show you a little bit more information than what you're used to. A really key one there is the lactation status. So that's a big request that we've had, to be able to see that last known lactation status for our breeders. You'll see there we've got both the date and then that lactation status being wet. So that's a really handy one that we've put in. The other one up the top there is that pregnant bubble. So that is based off last pregnancy scan. It will expire over time, so it's not going to show you a pregnancy status from 3 years ago. It's going to only show you relevant pregnancy statuses, which is great. You've then also got, if we keep going down, where it says breeding 2021 wet, that is what her current management group is. So you no longer have to rely on being able to see where it says management group there saying wet is highlighted. We can actually see up the top there really clearly, what's her current management group, and then we can put her in her new one as we need to as well. The other few things there, previous location, so that's the paddock that she's currently in on AgriWebb. I guess a really helpful one there if you're not mustering, say, that paddock beside river, if lots of animals are coming in from there, understanding what fences they might be pushing through or where there might be a problem is really good. Now, if we keep going down, this all remains the same in terms of the buttons that you can click to put them in a new management group, the draft 1, 2, or 3. You've then got the pregnancy scan as sort of usual, so let's say 5 months pregnant, as well as that lactation status, so wet or dry. I guess the really important thing there is this lactation status observation that we're recording. That's ultimately what's going to be pulling into the lactation status sort of line item there. So it's not going to be pulling in a management group, it's going to be going off of that observation. So it is really important to start, if you're not already doing that, recording the lactation status is as an observation rather than, say, a management group. If we keep going down, the only other thing there is the weight, so that will pull off your reader, and that's all fine. So I guess that's the key things that have changed, really, the design up the top there, which helps give you a little bit more information. The other things that are really handy that we've put in is if you hit that number 1 scanned up the top left there, there you go, it's not going to let me because I haven't done a second animal, but that scanned list will now be in order of the animals scanned as they've come up the crush. So if you need to jump back to an animal's just gone out and you've forgotten to record something, or you wanted to record a note on it or something, then you can just simply go back into that one scanned list and go back one animal. So that used to not be in any particular order, so that's another change that we've made that should be really, really handy. So that, I guess, is the breeders part that I really wanted to go through. If I hit finish there, I'm going to come in now and show you a few other things. You'll see here I've got a bit of summary, and I didn't record the weight, so I'll have to show you that in a different one. But let's come in now and we can do a say weaners template. So if I come in here and hit create live record, you can see that, for my weaners, I'm actually recording a few different other things rather than what I would record on my breeders. So I've got, again, my add animals step. If they're already in AgriWebb, that's going to skip over, but this will make your life easier adding in any new ones or ones that have been missed, say last muster. We've then got a weigh, a wean, and a castrate. If I come down, you can see I've got heifer weaners and bull weaners set up. Date on farm I'm leaving as blank, so it defaults to date of birth. I've then got my weaning default, so what sort of type of weaning that I did. If I want to leave that as empty, I can. Castration defaults being surgical removal, hardware, Q, which I always turn on, and then I've got my draft and management group options as well. So if I say pick in here, I've got, if I find one, say I've got my different weight groups that I might be drafting into, for example. So I'll just leave it as 2 just for now, but if I hit start session, I might show you now what it looks like when you are adding a new animal. So if I hit add an animal without an EID, you can see that this is creating that new animal, heifer or bull weaner, as I need to. I've got the breeds that I can select from based on that shortlist that I created. And this is the part that has, I guess, been updated a little bit. We've got that electronic ID, if you've connected to a scanner, will scan right in, and you can see that NILS ID field is open if you do want to record it. Again, a lot of people will ignore that, but it is an option there. You've then got your management groups, so ones that you want to put into, as well as the weight. So let's pretend this has come off my scale head. That's handy. Now you can see castration, that's skipped for females, and then I've got either weaning, or if I did want to skip it, if it was a small one and staying with its mother, for example. Now, what I'll have to do, I'll have to put in some numbers here, otherwise it won't let me go to the next animal. I don't believe. So you can see up the top there, I've got 4 out of 5 records complete, and that's really based on the fact that I've put that Q animals. It's not going to let me jump to the next one until I'm finished putting in information on this one. So what we can do now is come into a different example, so our sale weaners example. If I hit create live record, you can see, again, I've got my different steps. So add animals, if I scan an animal that already exists, it is just going to skip over that for me. And then I've got my weigh, wean, and castrate sections as well. So if I come in here, I can come and double check my age classes. So I want to be putting in heifer weaners, they're all born in the same month or an average month, and I've got my breeds as well. We've also then got our electronic ID, and let's say we're adding a visual ID as well. This time we might use that sequential tagging option, and this year or last year was blue, so we might be putting in blue tags, or they've already got blue tags in them, starting at say blue 001. So if I hit save, we've then, if we keep going, got some more details that we can fill out. So either our weaning method or castration defaults. And then again, we've got our queue, which I always turn on, as well as our draft and management groups. For this one, I might, for example, be putting in my different management groups of my weight classes. It really depends on what you're using them for, but this could be a good example. So if I hit start session, what I can do is hit add another animal. You'll see there I can flick from heifer weaner to bull weaner, whatever I like, as well as Brahman or Brahman cross. And then you've got down here our electronic ID or our visual ID tags. So you'll see the electronic ID will automatically come in for me on my reader. But then here I've got my visual ID. It's already started counting up for me. So because I put in that I'm starting at B001, it's automatically applied that visual ID for me. Now that will continue to count up the next animal that comes through, and so on and so forth. I've then got the weight that can come in off my reader, for example, and then weighting record. So that will continue so long as I sort of need it to go for in terms of the visual ID tag counting up for me. But really, yeah, just wanted to show you that. And then if I flick over to bull weaner, for example, I've got the same sort of thing. If I come down here, castration will be skipped, and I can flick it over to castrate as well if I want to castrate the steer weaners. So that is that from, I guess, the weaner perspective. If I hit finish, I'm just going to discard this one and come into the example of a steer induction, for example. Really the only main difference there is the fact that you can have a purchase record on the session template as well. So if I scroll down, all of this remains the same. We've got our different age classes that we can have on. We've got castration, dehorn, but we've also then got the purchase details. So you can come in here and add as much detail as you know, so say the purchase date. Now you can also leave the rest of this empty if you so wish, if you don't know it at the time. So that is totally fine. The rest of this remains the same, but really that's just, I guess, one less thing you've got to record later on. So that is really a lot of the live session improvements that I wanted to go through. Really the biggest key one is the different summaries on that home screen. You've got, lactation status, last known location and things like that, which should be, really, really handy.